And we're live.
We are.
Yes. Gonna let some people roll in before we do an introduction. Okay. They are pouring in, trying to make sense of what happened in Wisconsin last night, that judicial election that no one would ever pay attention to normally. But thanks to the millions and millions of dollars of Elon Musk, here we are trying to make sense of it all. We have Charlie Sykes, the renowned journalist who is a longtime host of a conservative talk show from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He knows the state better than anyone else, the stakes, how people were feeling on the ground, what this humiliation means for Elon Musk, even more importantly, Donald Trump and his agenda. Charlie is now on Substack with a very, very popular newsletter called To the Contrary. And he comes from the Bulwark, where he was editor in chief, and he's had a long, storied career. And so it's really great to hear from you and to get your perspective, because I feel like you really represent the Wisconsin voter, this sort of like battleground state voter, purple voter, that is super civically engaged, and you can tell in the numbers that came out last night. What's the top line for you? I loved your post, but share it to everyone who didn't get a chance to read your piece yet.
Well, the message to Elon Musk from Wisconsin, womp womp. This was a humiliation for Elon Musk. But can we just go back a little bit? I mean, I have been engaged in elections like this for more than 30 years, and I can remember when these were very low turnout elections, very low spending elections. They become more and more partisan. In the last couple of years, it has just gone nuclear. A couple of years ago, we had a Supreme Court election that cost about $50 million and blew everybody's mind. $50 million for one seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Now
This year,
90.
it went maybe more than $100 million for one seat. And it will preserve the 4-3 liberal majority, but we will have judicial elections every year for the next 6 years. There will be a state Supreme Court election every year for the next 6 years. So this has been increasingly crazy. But what made this one crazy was Elon Musk parachuted in, made himself the central figure, made this into a proxy fight, nationalized the narrative, and it really became a referendum on Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And there's no other way to really to read those numbers.
Of course, the spin you're getting from the White House is this isn't about this isn't about Donald Trump. This is about Elon Musk. Happy to have the heat shield right now, right? When Trump isn't on the ballot, it's not about him. And in fairness, he did not try to get involved in this race as much as Elon Musk did. I mean, Elon Musk
Right.
parachuted himself in there
Right.
with the cheese hat and everything, giving out $1 million checks. Frankly, I thought that was pretty smart, because the amount of money he got in coverage for that is worth the advertising. That wasn't the dumbest idea he ever had. But yeah, it was something. And now they've upped the ante to $100 million. So I guess the local broadcasters are making a ton of money in Wisconsin, saving the news, local news at least.
Well, no, it is interesting how the White House is doing that sort of like Elon who thing right now. I mean, what a coincidence that we would have gotten that we'd get that story from Politico today that Elon Musk is stepping away. You've done reporting about the people in the White House who would rather he moved on. I think that is fascinating, because there has to be a contingent of Republicans who are not unhappy that Elon Musk would have fallen flat on his face, because they recognize that he's politically toxic. I mean, part of it is that Elon Musk is not just politically toxic; he's bad at politics. He's incredibly naive. That thing in Green Bay where he parachutes in, treats himself like a rock star, puts on the cheese head. And by the way, nobody was buying Elon Musk wearing the fucking cheese hat. Nobody was buying that. Then he's throwing money around in a state like Wisconsin. So, but make no mistake about it. Donald Trump, this was a lot about Donald Trump too. I mean, I got literature in my mailbox every single day, just tons, stacks of it. I should brought it along for you. Every single piece of literature for the conservative candidate, Brad Schimmel, had Donald Trump's face on it. And it was all about We need to elect Brad Schimmel because he will support the Trump agenda. He will be the heat shield for Donald Trump. Schimmel gave speeches where he said we have to be part of the support network against the radical left's lawfare. So, from a voter point of view, it was all about supporting Donald Trump. And the whole strategy was to turn out low propensity Trump voters, to get those people who would not turn out. Backfired terribly because obviously a lot of new voters came out and they were not necessarily the Trump voters. And so Brad Schimmel underperformed pretty much everywhere in the state of Wisconsin.
It's amazing that Susan Crawford won by 10 points in a battleground state that is typically, most elections, I'm sure, are, decided by a few points.
Barely.
Can you explain this to me, Charlie? Because I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and this is something that people who are close to Trump and in the White House are kind of trying to figure out as well. So you have this initiative on the ballot for voter ID that wins by 20 points, right? This is a Republican-backed initiative.
Right.
And yet you have Susan Crawford win by 10 points. What's going on here? Is this just Republican voters are voting for Democrat now? Are they showing their unhappiness with Trump, or is this?
Well, I think the attention to the photo ID thing was overblown because we've had photo IDs for years in Wisconsin. I mean, you show up to vote in Wisconsin, you have to show a photo ID. It's not that controversial. It's not one of those real dividing lines. The way that it didn't have that kind of fissure that you had over the characters who were running for attorney general. So that didn't surprise me at all. I thought that was going to win with about 70% of the vote. But again, to your point about how close everything is in Wisconsin, almost every major race is decided by, it feels like, about 20,000 votes, less than 1%. Donald Trump won very narrowly here. So to have Susan Crawford go into this race and beat Brad Schimmel is a former attorney general of the state of Wisconsin. He was really a good candidate for the Republicans.
He's strong.
He was the best they could have come up with, I think. She blows him away by double digits. I mean, that's an indication that Elon Musk managed to do something that a lot of Democrats failed to do, which is to energize the Democratic base. I mean, all this spin about how demoralized they were and there's no leadership. They were fired up and they turned out, and you wouldn't have numbers like this if you didn't have the Trump-Musk intervention in this race. They nationalized this race. They woke up the Democratic base.
Okay, I have a theory. So Trump uses Elon Musk as a heat shield. Democratic Party realizes Elon Musk is a boogeyman. He is maybe the right Soros, you could say, right? Except he's actually out there. Whereas Soros gave money to this Wisconsin
doesn't wear the
election.
cheese hat. No.
Yeah, privately, Soros wrote a check for a few $1,000,000, right, to this Wisconsin election, but stepped away. Musk instead is hardcore, whatever you want to call it, dancing around on stage in his cheese head, loud and proud about it all. Now there is news, obviously, from my former colleague at Politico, Rachel Bade. She's a solid reporter. I know that we worked together on the playbook. And she's now reporting that Trump has told his inner circle that Musk will leave soon. Now, Musk was supposed to stay for about 4 months as a special employee, and that's the maximum amount of time he could stay without divesting. He is far short of 4 months. As I reported a few months ago, everyone around Trump just could not stand him, hated him. They didn't poll him at the time, but public polling was just showing that he's diving. Now, if Musk is out of the picture, does this Trump start taking the heat? Does he start diving?
See, I think this is a fascinating question because I do think that there's been that kind of heat shield approach to Musk, that if things really went bad, if he really fucked up Social Security, it would be Musk, and you could throw him under the bus, and the king could basically sacrifice one of his ministers. I get that. The problem is that Musk is not going to go away quietly. I think it's going to be hard for Trump to scrape him off the bottom of his boots. Because, because you think about it. I mean, Elon Musk is loving this. He's got his own cult of personality. He is still the richest man in the world. He still
has X, so he's powerful. He still has X.
He does, and he's got a lot of support. You look, right from the beginning of this administration, you knew that this was going to be the central drama of Trump 2.0, the Game of Thrones between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. There can only be one, right? You can't have two, world bestriding narcissists in the same room. It's like putting a scorpion and a snake in a bag. So something was going to happen. But the fact that that story would have appeared today, the morning after the humiliation in Wisconsin, is not a coincidence. Somebody's engaging in some CYA. Somebody is putting out spin like, who dat? Who is this guy? We're separating ourselves from him. My take on anything that comes out of the Trump administration is do not trust, verify. Um, but I think it's consistent with Donald Trump's lack of loyalty to anyone and the fact that he hates losing and he hates losers. And right now, Elon Musk is a big loser.
I think you're right about that. Now, I'm going to be honest. I did some reporting. I checked in with White House sources, and they said they tried to downplay it, right? They said, after all, Musk has donated $100 million to Trump in the past month. Okay. He gave hundreds of millions of dollars during the campaign, unheard of size for a donation by a single donor. So, at least that we know of. But I mean, I've always thought that he wouldn't last forever, but I don't think that Trump would really want to get on the wrong side of Musk. I think has to be done delicately. I don't think this is like fire him on the toilet like Rex Tillerson, or push him off the plane like Reince Priebus. I think this is going to be. I think Musk will still be in the orbit, even in a tangential way. Trump is he is impressed with him because he's way richer than he is as well. That's something that Trump admires, and they have this weird like daddy son kind of relationship. So I think I think yes, Musk may be out of the picture, but not completely. I could see him actually getting more engaged in the political arm, but perhaps just if they can just get him to give the money and use X as a bully pulpit, but keep him out of the states and out of the races. That's probably the way to go.
Well, or keep him out of Social Security. But I mean, let's do the counterfactual here. Elon Musk, it was completely voluntary for Musk to come to Wisconsin. He was not required to come here. It felt kind of random, right? Why would you pick a judicial race in Wisconsin to spend $26 million on? If he had won, he really would have established himself, right, as the enforcer and as the kingmaker in the Republican Party. I mean, this is an administration that is really relying on fear, fear of retribution, fear of action, fear of Elon Musk's money. They've made it very clear any Republican who bucks Elon Musk or Donald Trump will face millions, tens of millions of dollars in primary challenges and everything. And if he would have won in Wisconsin, he basically would have been the biggest stick around, right? I mean, rhymes with, and he would have been able to basically say, I can extend my reach anywhere in America for any race at any level. But it didn't turn out that way. So this was a major. I think this was a power play by Elon Musk to make himself even more powerful, even more relevant than he was before. And now he's less. By the way, just as a side note on this is important for the judiciary as well. Because the other big initiative besides chainsawing government is that Elon Musk has been leading the call to impeach federal judges who rule against Donald Trump. And this is a major attack on the judiciary. So on the one hand, he wants to impeach federal judges. On the other hand, he wants to show that he can handpick and elect judges around the country. So I think a lot of judges are breathing a sigh of relief that Elon Musk turns out not to have had that clout.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, this is, to me, a sign that 2026 is going to look a lot like 2018. That blue wave, and led possibly by moderate Democrats, as long as Democrats don't go Tea Party crazy and pick a bunch of loony lefties. Like, I think if they do what they did in 2018 and they chose more of those blue dog type of Republicans like Abigail Spanberger from Virginia or Mikey Sherrill from New Jersey, my old district where I grew up, long held by Republicans. I think they could really clean up. It depends on the party and which direction they end up going in. But I think this was a sign that their base was really fired up. And we saw that in Florida, too. Yes, they still won in Florida. I mean, Matt Gaetz' seat is basically Alabama. But it's a seat that was won by like 37 points, I think, by Trump. And this candidate won by 12 to 15. I can't remember. The teens. They sliced it in half, though. And same in the other district, too, Mike Waltz's former district. So I would be nervous, and they saw this last week when they pulled Elise Stefanik's nomination for UN
For dramatic.
ambassador. Yeah, they knew that because she's New York,
Mhm.
upstate. She voted against the tax bill. I think it's going to be a lot harder to pass this tax bill right now because of this election. He had 13 defectors last time in 2017, or maybe a few more than that, including Elise Stefanik, who wouldn't vote for his tax cuts. Now, what are they going to do in say a few months from now when his political power has decreased even more so?
Well, this is such an interesting question because right now there's that sense that Donald Trump, the Trump administration, is so powerful that there's no resistance, right? Everyone is caving in, everybody's cutting a deal, and yet the reality is that he controls the House of Representatives by this much. He can afford to lose what, 2 or 3 members. He controls the Senate. It would take 4 Republican senators to basically say we're not going along with this. So it's actually very fragile and very, very thin. And once that perception catches up, it's going to be a big problem for him, which is why I think they have been keeping the hammer down, making sure that there were no green shoots of dissent or independent thought, because they can't handle that. So it is going to be interesting to see whether they're going to be able to hold that together, because with the exception of the continuing resolution, you tell me, have they passed a single major piece of legislation yet? I mean, none of his agenda has really been approved by Congress yet.
And they
So
have to pass
all
the
of this
debt
stuff.
ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to do that. They're going to pass a bill where they promise to not only, okay, let me just go through this really quick. No tax on tips or overtime. No tax on Social Security entitlements. No cutting into Social Security and entitlements, while also bringing back the SALT and state and local tax deductions. How does this add up to be budget neutral? I don't know.
Tariffs. The
I'm not very
tariffs are
good
going
at
to pay
math.
for everything. Tariffs are magic. They can
Okay.
do anything, right?
Yeah, I don't know. You know what? Listen, I what do you think is happening today with the tariffs? Like what's going to go down? I mean, it's happening right now as we speak. Today is
Right.
Liberation Day.
Right.
I am free. Are you feeling free? I don't know. Am I going to be free to buy anything? I'm like, you think about it too. It's like I have a used car and I'm like, do I just hold on to it forever?
Actually, literally, I have a used car, and I was thinking about buying a car, and it's like I don't know. And the
Yeah.
reality is that nobody knows. I thought what was extraordinary is before the run up to what's happening right now, the people in the White House had no idea what he was going to do, and I think this is what ought to rattle people, is that this is all about Donald Trump's whim and his fetish for tariffs. There's not there's no really detailed ideological blueprint here. Now, there isn't a lot of what they're doing. I mean, there's a lot of that Project 2025 stuff where they clearly have a blueprint. But when it comes to this is just something that Donald Trump has been thinking about since the 1980s or the 1990s, and he just believes in tariffs, and he apparently is not listening to anybody, including people in his orbit who are telling him that the last thing you want to do is start a trade war. Trade wars do not end well. The one thing that I think people ought to go and Google is look up Smoot-Hawley. Nobody
Yeah.
thinks of Smoot-Hawley as one of the smartest things we did. That's what plunged the country even deeper into the Great Recession, when people thought that, hey, the way we come back is we impose these vast new tariffs. So,
Mm,
look, the poll numbers are not good on all of this. Any president that is underwater on the economy is in deep trouble. I mean, it's almost a cliche. And you would
yeah.
think that of all the people in American politics who would instinctively understand that Donald Trump would be number one, but he doesn't give a shit, apparently, when it comes to tariffs.
Yeah, it's really weird because he took so much pride when the economy was doing well and the stock market was booming. He used to tweet, "That's a Trump's policy. That's a Trump
Mhm.
stock market." And now you're seeing so much uncertainty in the market. He doesn't
Yeah.
really seem to care. He's really set on tariffs. Maybe this is the art of the deal, and he thinks if he can get a few wins and trumpet them and say, "Look, I brought one major
Right.
manufacturer said they're coming back.
Yeah.
I have a few wins, and that's good." And politically he can highlight that as something that's really substantial when it's not, kind of like that mineral deal with Ukraine that is like
Yeah,
is really a nothing burger.
yeah.
But exactly, like 10 years from now, maybe they'll get minerals, but they're all under Russian tanks in the eastern Ukraine. Like, but to then
Details.
that's a justification for sending more money to Ukraine. Like, this is kind of a political show. So if he can get a few automakers, or he can do something that looks like a win for his base, I mean, that's maybe
I
what he's
think.
doing. Kind of like
I
the
think.
Epstein files that had nothing in them. It's
No,
just a
I think
show.
you're. I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think Donald Trump basically thinks that you don't actually need to succeed. You just need to say that you succeeded. You don't need to build the wall. You just need to say you built the wall.
Exactly.
And so, yes, you can have a bunch of photo ops. Somebody's going to invest in the country, and then he hopes that people are not seeing that their 401ks are going down, or the cost of living is going up as a result of his policies. It does seem that people are realizing that, though. The other thing, and this is what really, I'd say, many things make my head explode, but this is one of them. That conservatives used to understand that one of the reasons why you did not pick winners and losers or have government make all these decisions is because the economy is so complex. It is billions of interactions, and therefore it's unknowable. And no one can actually know all of the unintended consequences of their action. You pull this thread over here, you don't know what might collapse over here. I don't think
Mm.
Donald Trump has any idea how complicated international trade has become. I don't think he understands supply chains. I don't think he understands the downstream effects of some of the things he's doing.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to do a little breaking news in here. Not to steal from our
Yeah.
competitors on cable news, but Donald Trump just tweeted out announcing his reciprocal tariffs, because today there were questions over whether they were going to be universal or reciprocal. This seems like a little bit of a walk down, don't you think? Especially if you started the trade war.
Well, again, it depends how he interprets it. Is he going to include value added taxes, the European value added taxes, which really ought not to be, and a lot of people are telling him not to do it. I don't know. There's so many different details in all of this that until you go through it, I have no idea. I'm
Okay,
not going to pretend to be an economist.
I'm going to talk really briefly on something. So I used to live in Europe. I helped Politico expand to Politico Europe. And I lived in Brussels for a few years. So I covered the transatlantic partnership deal that
Yeah.
Obama was trying to do, a trade deal between the European Union and the US. Fell apart because actually the Europeans thought that our goods were crap. They said we had chlorine chicken, hormones in our meat, and I
Yeah.
actually agree with them, having lived in Europe, that the food is way cleaner and healthier, and they have way more regulations and restrictions on what you can ingest, and so there were a lot of reasons for it. And when I was living there, I did notice it's really hard to get American food. Like, I tried to have an American themed party on the night of the election. I couldn't get popcorn. I couldn't get peanut butter. I couldn't get like guacamole mix. I couldn't get anything. All the cars around me. No, no, but really, let me just finish this really quick. All of the cars. This isn't just anecdotal. I lived there for 2 years. Never saw a Ford, a GMC.
Right.
Never saw a Chrysler. Never. I don't know if Chrysler is still made in the U.S. anymore, but I never saw American goods in Europe. They really had closed off their market to us in a very substantial way. And we do import a lot of their goods. Now, they make really great wine, great skincare, great products, great food. Like, there's a reason why we go there. But yeah, I don't think he's entirely wrong about the fact that we have a serious trade imbalance and there's a way to do it and that it should be handled. I'm not sure, like trade war threats where it's like a shootout in the
Yeah.
White House, lawn is the way to go about it. But that's my anecdotal experience. In never heard of Ford of Europe. Yeah, I never saw Ford when I lived in Europe, Scott. Like, not once. It was all
Yeah.
German cars.
Hmm.
Like Mercedes, they make very cheap Mercedes. They're Fiat, French cars, Italian
Peugeot.
cars, Peugeot. I never saw American cars on the road.
Well, my grandkid, my daughter, my grandkids are French. They live in France. I actually spent election night in France. So
Okay.
yes, I recognize what you're saying, and I think part of if you're trying to get to a fairer trade situation, you need to use a scalpel. You need to use a rifle. You need to be very very targeted
Uh-huh.
in not doing a lot of collateral damage. And I don't get the sense that they're doing that. I mean, that's the real problem when you're talking about sweeping tariffs on all sorts of products from countries that I mean, part of the thing that's so strange is Donald Trump's commitment to creating conflict with our closest allies, burning down relationships, when in fact, look, he's supposed to be such a great negotiator. Shouldn't you be able to target? And I know a lot of businessmen who were reassuring me before the election and after the election, oh, don't worry about these tariffs. He's not going to do this. He's simply using this as a negotiating tactic. I'm not sure that's true. But we're going to see this play out. The question is how much collateral damage. And by the way, my point I was trying to make is that he's burning through tremendous goodwill on so many different fronts, and it's going to be hard to put those things back. Once you don't, it's like any personal relationship. Once you no longer trust someone, once you feel someone has betrayed your trust, it's very hard to put that back together again. I think that's also true with nations. And Europe is now deciding, is America our ally? Is America our friend? Should we rely on them? Should we have closer ties? Or are we in this moment now where we are going to have to go it alone even more than we have in the past? I think the scariest story for me of the week was this announcement that the Koreans, the South Korea and Japan, were basically making common cause with China in responding to our. So around the world, people looking around and going, we need to rethink our entire relationship with the United States. And you can't just put those things back together again quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's right. I do think though that Europeans, it's good that they're stepping up and creating more of a defense,
Yeah.
alliance. I think that's something they've had to do all along. I just having lived in Brussels, they really relied on American intelligence and defense in a way that like they probably needed to step up. I do think, and yeah, also obviously we can't forget that when we went into Afghanistan, Iraq. They were the ones that came with us. Tons of Ukrainians die on the front lines. We
The
know
danger.
this. Yeah. The only thing is, I agree with you. Like he's definitely antagonizing our allies to a great degree. It's changing the world order. I just had Mark Cuban on my podcast, and he said he thinks that these tariffs are reversible, but he said I'm going to raise the costs for my pharmaceutical companies, my other companies. He's like, there's no other way to do it. Um, and he said some companies he might be able to get around it, but most of them, including a lot of his Shark Tank companies, like there's no other way
Yeah.
that the customers have to eat the cost.
I have a question I want to ask you about that. But one of the things that worries me about this changing world order here is think of the number of countries that have, since World War II, relied on the American nuclear umbrella. If you no longer rely on that, then it creates a huge incentive for massive nuclear proliferation. What country on the planet does not now think through, we would be safer if we had our own nuclear weapons? What could go wrong there? So now I want to ask you a question. Do you think that Mark Cuban is going to run for anything? What is he up to?
He was on my show and
He's
he
doing the
said,
podcast. Yeah.
I
So,
asked him, I was like, why do you do all these podcasts?
yeah.
Yeah. No, he's great. He basically said that he still considers himself being independent, but if he were to run, although he's not going to, but as you know, we've been in this game long enough to hear
Yeah.
that for a while. He would run as a Republican. He thinks there's more opportunity just because it relies on such a cult of leadership, and that without Trump, it will probably be in a state of loss. He said it would be easier. It'd be a path of least resistance. But he's kind of right. Like the Democrats are just like have. I was actually just on Andrew Yang's show and we were talking about this. There's probably at least like 24 Democrats, if not 20, who are lined up and ready to go. And some of them are pretty interesting characters, and it would be harder to get to jump into that field, I think, than to run as a Republican right now, especially post Trump, because Trump's not even endorsing JD Vance, right?
Yeah.
He's leaving that open. If he's gone, it's anyone's guess. And clearly, like the base didn't really love Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or any of the people in the old mold of the Republican Party. I don't know what MAGA is without Donald Trump, because MAGA doesn't know what MAGA is without Donald Trump.
Right. I know. I
Because it
agree.
shifts for him. It moves around for him. He's a cult of personality. Like Cuban kind of has that.
So do you take? I mean, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how seriously do you take the third term chatter?
I don't take it at all. I think he is saying it to A, troll the libs, B, um, present the impression that he's not a lame duck,
Yes,
even though he is.
important.
And third, it's just like I think it's a little bit of hysteria, like liberal hysteria, because you need 2/3 majority in the House and Senate. And as we talked about, he's got like on a good day, if somebody like falls over, they can't do shit. Okay, like
Yeah,
they need perfect attendance at all times, 2 to 3 person majority. So
yeah.
even if he wants that, and he's at the height of his political character, power right now. So if he were to, even make that play, it would have to happen literally right now, unless he somehow got like the military on his side. I don't know what else he could do.
Well, let me give you the counter argument. I hope you're right on this, and my default position is that this is just his. This is him trolling. This is him trying
Mm-hmm.
to distract us. However, I also think that we've all suffered from a failure of imagination with this guy, and we've seen in
That's
the
true.
past how crazy ideas you see them often, like a small cloud or something in the edge of the fever swamp or something that Steve Bannon is talking about. And then gradually you see it migrate into the mainstream, and before you know it, it becomes GOP orthodoxy. And let's not forget what he's done with the big lie, what
Mm.
he did with January 6th. I don't think he'd amend the Constitution at all. I don't think he's going to try to get 2/3 vote. But he has he's blown through so many guardrails and encountered so little resistance that at some point in his mind he's thinking, who would stop me?
Yeah, I think he'd
Maybe
make it.
I.
I think he should. He would try. I have zero doubt. I think it'll be like
Okay,
January 6th. I think he would try, and you're already hearing the argument. They're normalizing it. FDR, 3 or 4 terms. Like, oh, if somehow we are in a Great Depression or we're in the middle of some sort of war, he might make the argument we're in emergency time. Oh,
right.
Zelensky said the
Well,
same thing, and
he
so
can
did.
create that, though. I
Yes,
mean, the thing is that
exactly.
he knows he can create the emergency, and he can convince his base. And do you have any confidence that Republicans in Congress would push back?
Depends on how powerful he is. It depends on how powerful he is, and literally his power is literally decreasing every single day. Again, if he had a robust majority
Yeah,
in the House and Senate, I would say so, but he is on the pathway to losing as many as 26 House seats, okay, in 2018. It
yeah,
could be more than, sorry, 2018, what am I
hmm
saying? Rerun of 2018
yeah.
in 2026. So I just don't think you can do that. But again, anything is possible with brute force, military force. Like that's the only other way.
That's the darker vision. But no, I agree with you,
I
and
mean,
it's going
that's
to
what we
be
saw on January 6th. It was brute force. You couldn't do it
right.
through the constitutionally. So it was almost like a militia. That was the only way.
Well, we saw it on January 6th, but what if the cops switch sides? What? Okay, now I'm getting dark. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Let,
Charlie.
let, let,
Now
let,
we're
let's go back to a Democratic House changes everything, because right now he doesn't have to worry about hearings. He can
mm,
push things through, and so there's suddenly the possibility of another impeachment that wouldn't go anywhere. But yeah, I sense. And you tell me if I'm right about this. Part of this frenetic pace that we're seeing, which is really pretty extraordinary, the shock and awe, is
mm,
they recognize they have very little time. They may
yes.
only have this calendar year, because by the end of this year, right, you go into campaign mode, and you'll be in a year in which everyone will be assuming that you're going to lose control of one house of Congress. So they know that they have the clock running, and you become, nothing is a lamer duck than a lame duck that has just lost the house.
Oh yeah, no, they don't have much time at all. I actually don't even think they have until the end of the calendar year. Like I think I mean, I know they're trying to pass this massive reconciliation package by December, but every day is a bad day. The time is ticking for them, and you're hearing background quotes, from members and senators complaining about the downstream effects of Doge. They're going to start. They can't even go to the GOP town halls. Like they can't even do town halls. Republicans.
Yes.
This is not a good time for the party right now. So yeah, they're better off ramming it through right now and getting a skinny version, frankly, than waiting. I think there's risk in waiting, but that's my take.
Well, there's risk either way. So your story was very interesting earlier this week when you talked about, well, of course, Mike Walls has all his phone numbers because he was trying to get on your show. He was trying to be right here. Does he survive Signalgate? I mean, you and I are talking. It's been a week and a half, and it already feels like it's receding. But that was a scandal that felt like it had legs. So where do you think we're at on this?
Yeah, I think no, he doesn't survive long term. I think in a week or so, maybe a month, a little distance. They're actually in a weird way, this election, he's probably breathing a little easier right now. I think in a month or so he's out. But what he did, and my whole point was that like he was trying to build his profile. Did you really think, I know you're super plugged into the Republican Party, but did you really think that Mike Waltz was going to be a national security advisor? Two-term congressman, voted to certify the election for Joe Biden. His main connection was Susie Wiles. I mean, the campaign manager. They're both from Florida. You know, he was out there trying to promote himself in the same way that Scott Bessent was, in the same way that Doug Burgum was, in the same way that they all were, because that's how you get on Trump's radar, and it's how you survive, frankly. It's like an Oscars campaign. But for a cabinet posting or a senior administration official. And the thing about being the NSA is you can fire them and they can reappoint someone the next day. So he's an easy guy to get rid of. He's already outlasted Mike Flynn, who went down on Valentine's Day, the worst Valentine's Day ever. And he also, you know, they also spent a lot of money to save Pete Hegseth, you know, to get him through through confirmation, and they spent a lot of political capital on him. And he kind of represents their MAGA base in a way that Waltz doesn't. I think they could call him a neocon privately, okay, because he was talking to Goldberg in the first place. And I just think it's rich that they're like, he's talking to the press. It's like your own boss talks to the press all the time.
Well, they could send him to the embassy in Greece and hang out with some of the other misfit toys or something like that.
Kimberly is holding that one down. Maybe he'll have to go to Cyprus, okay?
Yeah. Something like that.
That was great, though. I'm really enjoying this. I hope we do this more often. I would be happy to do it. And everyone else, like, you know, keep the questions and coming, and please support both of us on this fun, independent journey.
It's a hell of an adventure.
Yeah, it is. Cool. Thanks, Charlie.
Well, thank you.
Cheers. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.